So why don't we prepare for worship this morning? Just before we start, actually, I'm going to invite Pastor Ruth Wilkinson to come up. She's going to be sharing a bit about a new work that she's doing through First Baptist in town. It's a drop-in, it's a warming room, and it's an opportunity for us to partner with them in some really worthy work in the community, helping people who are struggling with homelessness and poverty and other needs in their life. So I'll give Ruth a few moments. I want to give her a warm welcome this morning.
Good morning, and I bring you greetings from down the street at First Baptist. For people who have not had the opportunity to meet, I led worship here for about 10 years as a volunteer, and that was wonderful working with Jeff Knott for those years. And during those 10 years, I had the opportunity to start and to lead and to grow a ministry at Greenwood Motel. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Some nods. It's a place where there is some what's euphemistically called affordable housing in town, and there are some friends who live there. And that ministry that began at Greenwood Motel, we eventually transitioned it into what has become the Greenwood Coalition. And that experience taught me a tremendous amount, both about myself and about the heart that God had given me to be out there on the margins with people who, for some of them, they're hanging on, by the ragged edge. And people who experience, especially this past year has taught us, are taken from us far, far too easily. So here's your quiz for this morning. Yesterday I was geeking out a little bit to the 2021 Northumberland County homelessness, what do they call it? Enumeration, the homelessness enumeration. Basically a head count that the county does every 2 or 3 years to get an idea of what the situation is with homelessness in Northumberland County. There are probably around 200 people in Northumberland County who are homeless. What percentage of those people in Northumberland County do you think live in Port Hope? Guesses. 50? 75? Okay. The actual answer is 13. 13% of the homeless people in Northumberland live in Port Hope. Coburg has about 82% of the homeless people in Northumberland, largely because that's where the resources are. That's where the supports are. That's where the government and other agencies have centralized to in the name of efficiency. Don't get me started on that. So that's where the vast majority of homeless people live. In Port Hope right now, how many people do you think we have sleeping outdoors in the cold? No idea? 5%? Good guess. Just guessing, right? Okay, it's actually 0 right now, which is something for which I am, just so relieved. Because last winter we had 4 or 5, or possibly 6 at different times. Right now we have 0 people in Port Hope sleeping rough. The vast majority of our homeless people fall into the category of living in motels, which are not intended as permanent housing. People who are couch surfing, which again, euphemistically, very often means sleeping on a air mattress on somebody's kitchen floor. I've seen that. So these are the invisible homeless. That is Port Hope's situation. We are not Toronto, where we have people sleeping on the streets. We're not even Coburg, where we have people sleeping on the streets. So Port Hope solutions and Port Hope responses need to be Port Hope. We need to understand our people. We need to understand our homeless neighbors. We need to understand their situation. And when, in the summer, we do have 7 or 8 people sleeping in tents on the beach or in the woods by the river, we need to know who they are, why they're there, and what we can do to serve and to support them better. And that's where the drop-in comes in. I'm officially a ministry of First Baptist Church, but Elizabeth is on our team from here at Grace. We have people from Fellowship Baptist Port Hope on our team as well, and from St. John's Anglican on our team as well. This is a multi-church endeavor. We are doing our best at this point to figure out what it is that we can do. And the best way we can figure out to do that, because we can't go to the park, we can't go to the street to ask them because our homeless people are not there. So we've started the drop-in as an opportunity for people to just come, have snacks, warm up if they need to. We're going to have games, board games, maybe some jigsaw puzzles or something. We're going to have sewing supplies there and some people who can do basic sewing repairs, because there are a lot of people who don't know how to do those things. We're also going to have a bike pump, because a lot of our homeless people, that's their mode of transportation. It's either the town bus or a bicycle. So we're trying this thing, we're starting it. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what it's going to look like. But I will sort of give you some principles that we're living by, some principles that we're working according to. And these are sort of 4 modes of engagement with homeless people and with our isolated neighbors that we sort of put together at our first planning meeting. These are 4 different ways, different approaches, different methods of interacting with and on behalf of our homeless friends. The first one is what we call charity. Charity is giving. Charity is, I have more than I need, so I'm going to share it with someone else. Whether that's money, food, warmth, electricity, Wi-Fi, water, whatever. I have more than I need, so I'm going to share it. I'm going to give it. So that's charity. The second interaction is justice. And Dwayne, this was one that you resonated with. The idea of justice, of looking at the structures and systems that exist, seeing where they are corrupt, where they are failing, where they are just not fair, and speaking out against those things and working to change those systems. Sometimes that's, just one person behind a desk at a time. Sometimes it's like getting a picket sign and marching up and down in front of the MPP's office. That's justice. We are working to change things. The third is advocacy. Advocacy is a little bit more challenging. Advocacy means getting to know somebody well enough that they trust you to stand with them. Whether it's going to a doctor's appointment and just taking notes because you know that they're terrified and they're not going to remember what was said, or whether it's sitting down with somebody and helping them fill in an application form for support, for going with them to that appointment to help them, to encourage them just to be moral support, or to help them to say the things that they have a hard time saying themselves. Or sometimes it's finding out how to go through an appeal process, because those can be very daunting. If someone has been told no, sometimes they give up, and sometimes they don't have to. So if we are being advocates, we can walk into those situations with them, but we have to get to know them first, and they have to trust us first. And our fourth principle, and the one that I resonate the most with, is what we call presence. Just being there. Just being a friend. Just showing up and having a conversation. Going to the house where they're sleeping on the kitchen floor in an air mattress and sitting down in the kitchen while they make you a cup of instant coffee with that powdered stuff in it that they got from the food bank, and just being a friend, listening, laughing, arguing sometimes. I've had some great debates with people over theology and whether or not God exists, over cups of coffee in kitchens. So we've got charity, we've got justice, we've got advocacy, and we've got presence. Those are the 4 touch points that we are going to be looking at as we move forward in the drop-in. Jesus engaged in all 4 of these activities. He did acts of charity when he fed the hungry. He did acts of justice when he flipped the tables in the temple to make room for people to pray. He did acts of advocacy when he stood with the woman who had been brought to the temple for judgment, and he spoke for her in a way she was not able to speak for herself. And his whole life was an act of presence. His whole life was an act of showing up and being one of us. Our drop-in is based on imitating Jesus, imitating Christ, walking in his footsteps, trying to be who he calls us to be individually. We all the people at that planning meeting identified with different points, different ones of those 4 points. So, more than anything, I want to ask you to pray for us. Pray for wisdom, pray for insight, pray that God would draw people to the drop-in, not only who we can help, but who can help us to understand what is needed and what needs to happen next. I thank you for the support that this church has been over the years. Speaking of when Jeff and I and Amy and Evelyn, we were the first core group for Greenwood. We sat right here week after week praying and talking until we had a handle on what it was that God was calling us to actually step out and do. And today, we are stepping out by opening our doors, because it's the only place we have where we can begin. So I thank you for your support. I thank you in advance for your prayers. If you have any questions, please talk to me. Dwayne has my email address if you want to get in touch. But I thank you. And we covet your prayers.